Well, we're talking about what I believe. And the last few times we've talked about God made us. God made us in his image. And the last time we talked about God made garments. Today we want to talk about God made his way to earth. He came to this planet. And so if you look in Matthew, and we're going to look at Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, it says, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel." Now, that is a verse that's taken from the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible. And this was written in Isaiah chapter number 7, verse 14. And this was also time-wise written 700 years in Isaiah 7:14, 700 years before Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was born on this planet. Also in a little book in the Old Testament called Micah, chapter 5, verse 2, it says, "But you, O Bethlehem of Ephraim, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be a ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from old and from ancient days." In other words, he's predicting here the coming of the Messiah, the coming of Christ. Now, I can read that, and you say, why is that important? It's critical, because how in the world can something that was written down 700 years before, and then 700 years later it comes to reality, and we look at it and yawn and say, big deal. It's a big daggone deal. But let's go to John in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, chapter number 1, verse 1. "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He, Jesus, was in the beginning with God." And then it goes on to talk about who he is and what he did. You read down through that, and you can almost, after a while, say, yeah, I've heard that before, and you kind of yawn and maybe want to go get a snack or something. But let me tell you, when you get down to verse 14, man, this is powerful. Verse 14, it says, "And the Word, Jesus, became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." Jesus Christ, the Messiah, predicted all kinds of prophecies in the Old Testament, saying he was going to come, where he was going to be born, what he was going to go through in his life, and much, much more. It happened. He came. And so, the response, let's look at the response just for a moment of those people. In Luke, it says the shepherds came to find Jesus, and they were directed to him. And when they saw it, they made known the saying that had been told them concerning the child. But then after they had seen the Messiah, the Christ, verse 20, this was their response. "And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them." So you say, what's the deal? Well, here's the deal. What's your response? Here we are on Christmas Day, 2017, December 25th. And on this day, the greatest gift that has ever been given to humanity came in the person of that little baby who grew to be a man, who lived, died, and rose from the dead. That's what this day is all about. Not all the stuff under the tree, not all the stuff, but it's about a person. Jesus Christ claimed to be God in a body. So I got a question for you as we close on this Christmas Day. Have you encountered this living Christ who really was born, who really lived, who really died, who really rose from the dead? Have you? Number two, if so, how are you glorifying and praising him? When it says glorify and praise, I think what it essentially means, how are you living? How has knowing Christ made a difference in how you live and what you do and what your priorities are every day of your life? Is the living Christ making a difference in your life? Well, you say, nah, I've never known Christ. I'm just hearing about this. Well, let me tell you, the greatest gift, as I said a moment ago, has been given to us through Jesus Christ. John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." You say, how do I get this? You have to believe that Jesus was who he claimed to be, God in a body, that he lived, died, and rose from the dead. You say, well, I don't understand all that. All you've got to do is step out in faith and say, Lord, if it's true, convince me. But you got to make a move because he's already made the move. He came. John 1:12 says, to as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become a son, or I'll add, or daughter of God. Have you received Christ? Have you asked him into your life? On this Christmas day, no greater thing that you could do this day than to bow your head and say, thank you, Lord Jesus, for coming. Now come and live in my heart. Clean me up. And from this day forward, help me to become the person you've always wanted me to be. You think about that and then do something about it.